Hi, Mitch Tanenbaum here. Thanks for joining me today. This is the security news update for December 31st, 2023. This will be the last security news update of the year. And here's wishing all of our listeners and viewers a happy and healthy, prosperous 2024. In the alerts department, unfortunately, electric vehicles are like all other bits of software. An electric vehicle really is, a software program or lots of software programs and computers, probably hundreds of them under the covers. Happens to have wheels and a motor, but basically it's a hunk of software. And software has bugs. And I don't care who the vendor is, and if the vendor tells you that their software doesn't have bugs, they're lying. No such no such piece of software exists today, at least no practical piece of software. So we're seeing these electric vehicles occasionally getting kind of wrapped around the proverbial axle. In this particular case, there was an over-the-air update, which a lot of these electric vehicles are doing now, to a Ford EV, and it caused the car to display a message that says something like, due to a failed software update, your car cannot be driven. At which point your only option is to call a tow truck and make sure it's a flatbed tow truck. Can't be one that drags the back wheels on the ground. That will ruin the car. And tow it to your dealership and hope they can fix it. Hope that maybe it's covered under warranty. We saw one case in New York for a Rivian. So this is a different vendor, EV, with the car had to pay over $2,000 to tow the car back from the New York upstate mountains back to Boston, where he lived, because your local mechanic can't fix these things. It's completely beyond them. So really, your only option is a dealership, which if you're used to paying dealership prices for service, it's fine if the maintenance is under warranty. That doesn't cost you anything. But as soon as it's outside of warranty, the dealer is really the only place you can go for service. I mean, there are a few things probably that you can do elsewhere, like maybe tires, but even brakes require special tools oftentimes that are very, very expensive, and only the dealers have because the manufacturers subsidize the dealers. So, in the case of this person whose car was broken down in the middle of the Adirondacks, Ford did fix the car. They offered to extend his warranty, which is a nice gesture, because really legally all they're obligated to do is fix the car, and probably to pay the towing costs, but maybe not even that. Um, and and at that point, that particular owner seemed reasonably happy with the situation. But you got to understand that these are risks. This is kind of a new technology, and it really doesn't matter whether it's a gas-powered car, internal combustion engine, or an electric car. Though electric car has more software in it. Certainly, a car with self-driving features has more software in it, and the software has bugs, and this is not a beat down on electric cars. It's not a beat down on any particular vendor. It's just the nature of software, and you really need to make sure that you understand that if you buy electric car. Now, this particular article says, they could also, what they call brick your car, turn it into a brick. If let's say, you're late on your car payment or you're have an unpaid parking ticket, that's probably highly unlikely in the United States, but you never know, of course. And these are all things. I mean, you're really not buying the car anymore. You're sort of renting it, and even if you paid cash for it, there's a lot of things that are outside of your control that you can't turn off. So, so be it. Next, the UK is warning website operators to create a reject all cookies. Sometimes you see that in the United States, you see these websites that say accept all the cookies. And then there is, if you go through some kind of gyrations, you can get to a point where you can actually reject cookies. But what the United States, the state laws and the federal laws call dark patterns, which means that it's harder to undo something than to do it. the EU, or at least the UK, is getting much more aggressive about enforcing that and saying, in this particular case, you have 30 days to get your act together for these sites that they gave notice to. And after that, we're going to start enforcement actions. So, in the United States, I don't think it's far behind. It might be a couple of years. But if you don't have the ability to opt out of all marketing cookies, then I would really suggest adding that feature to your website. And next, last in the alert section, ransomware attackers have figured out how to abuse something called the Windows Common Log File System. It's a very highly privileged piece of software inside of Windows computers that is used to log security events, amongst other events. And apparently, Microsoft has had a bit of a challenge over the last several years keeping it secure. And because of the privileges that it runs with, that's really a problem. Russian security firm Kaspersky, and I don't know exactly how Mr. Kaspersky, Gene, has avoided upsetting Putin and falling out of a fifth-story apartment building window, which a lot of his friends, generals and other folks in Russia seem to, and it just seems to be a lot of people falling out of windows. Anyway, I'm guessing it's because of the blackmail that he probably has on Putin. That's probably not in the country. That if something were to happen to him, man, stuff might go public, and probably Putin wouldn't like that. Anyway, he's the one who discovered it. His team discovered it, and it's a very juicy target for hackers. And what Kaspersky is saying is that it just basically needs to be completely overhauled. There's just no way to fix it. So as is. Next, in the reference section, one of the folks that are in the companies that are in the PCI payment card compliance business releases a very nice guide every year on PCI compliance. In 2024, there's a new standard, a new sheriff in town. We moved from PCI 3.2 to PCI 4.0, and the rules are different and they're more strict. And it probably makes sense because the last time the rules were changed was about at least 5 years ago, maybe more. And so, if you accept credit cards, and there's ways that you can minimize your compliance hassles. If you accept credit cards and you would like to minimize your compliance hassles because you don't like doing any more than you have to, then you should probably reach out to us. But there's this nice 150-page guide, which is great bedtime reading if you're an insomniac. Next, in important issues, after a really long time, Senator Tuberville, who has been on a one-man mission to screw up the military, even though he claims that's not his goal, it clearly is his goal, has released the hold on military appointments that Congress has to do. And Air Force General Timothy Haw has been unanimously confirmed. When was the last time Congress did anything unanimously? To replace Army General Paul Nakasone, who's been the head of both the National Security Agency and Cyber Command for the last 6 years. So that's a good thing. The good news is that Nakasone was still, chairing those two organizations. So it wasn't like they were running rudderless, but, the plan was to replace him. That 6 years is a long time in a role like that. Next, in the legislative department, Google has apparently, we haven't seen the details, agreed to settle a class action lawsuit that claimed that, now who could guess this, right? That incognito mode in your browser is not really private. I mean, of course it's private. It says there right there on the opening page. It says, now you can browse privately. Well, that's not really true. It is true that certain artifacts that are normally stored on your own computer or phone are not stored in incognito mode, but that's the only difference. And Google is still harvesting all your data, even in incognito mode, as are all the websites. So we haven't seen the details of what Google agreed to. Um, it may well be just that they're going to change the wording on the website. I don't know. But what's happened, and I think the reason why they're settling, is that Google has been throwing motions at the court right and left, kind of like Trump in all his cases. And similar to that, in the Google case, the court is just denying all these motions. So they're probably concerned that there's an awful lot of dirty laundry that will be exposed if this thing goes to trial. And even if it costs them hundreds of millions of dollars, it's still cheaper than having that dirty laundry out in public. So that's my guess, but we haven't seen the details of it. Next, also in the legal department, there is a scam called pig butchering, which means that the idea behind it is um, people who get greedy, and mostly it's in cryptocurrency scams where someone approaches you that you have no idea who they are. They befriend you, often as a person of the opposite sex who is pretends to be attracted to you for whatever reason. Then they say, "Gee, I got this great investment opportunity." Which, of course, if you meet somebody on Facebook or Twitter, I mean, that's the perfect place to get investment advice. Anyway, they say, "Gee, these returns are amazing." They even let you invest a little bit of money, and actually on paper through this fake website that the pig butcher runs, it looks like you're making money. Of course, and they might even let you withdraw a little bit of it, but not very much because they don't really want you to have any money. But anyway, the con artist on the other end, um, often an attractive young lady, or someone pretending to be one of those, um, will convince you to invest more and more money until they have large quantities, maybe all, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars, um, and sometimes even millions of dollars, because people are greedy and they say, "Gee, I can't get 20% return on investment anywhere else. I'm just going to invest all my money." So anyway, um, the feds have charged four people, four scammers in one of these scams, and there's thousands of these scams, unfortunately. In this particular case, it's interesting. All four of them are in the United States, three are in California, one in Illinois. They've arrested two of them so far. The other two are on the run, but I'm guessing they'll find them. Um, and that's a good thing. They need to do more of that. Um, the FBI reports that pig butchering losses in 2022, and the losses that are reported to the FBI, just a fraction of the losses out there, was $3.5 billion with a B, $1 billion. So big number, and anything that they can do to go cut those losses down. Also, in the education section, we have an FBI report, or I'm sorry, CNN report, talking about how these scams work. They're really horrible. They're basically human slavery on the scammer side. A lot of these, even though these particular guys I mentioned a minute ago were in California, a lot of these are in authoritative authoritarian countries like Myanmar, um, and people think they're getting into a good paying job. They go to Myanmar, and then the people who are running the scam say, "We'll give you two choices: either you participate in the scam, or we'll kill you." At which point, most people opt for participating in the scam because they don't want to die, and it's not good. So anyway, the CNN article in the newsletter is great reading. It's a bit long, but it's definitely good reading for sure. Next, in the breaches department, which there's never any shortage of, uh, I think it's pronounced Callius and Associates. It's an accounting firm, so-called accounting firm. If there is a legitimate accounting firm in Cyprus, I'm sure the country would be mad at me for saying that. is founded by a graduate of the London School of Economics, so you know, obviously understands accounting, or hopefully does. Anyway, they got hacked. But remember, the purpose of accounting firms and tax havens is to launder money. That's the only reason why you do that. And you know, they do that through either marginally legal or less than marginally legal tax shelters. Um, Now, almost 900,000 people's customers' files dating back to 1995 again. You know, if you wouldn't keep the data spinning around from 1995, you know, if for whatever reason you need that data from 1995, put it on a couple of hard disks so you have redundant copies, put it in a bank vault, and you know, make sure that you're the only one with the key. If you need it, you can get to it, but the hackers are going to be really challenged to get to that. On the other hand, this particular case, almost 900,000 files are in the wild, and there's probably some very wealthy people who are getting ready to sue these people out of existence. That would be my suspicion, that this company will cease to exist shortly. Um, and I also suspect that there's probably some governments who are likely to subpoena those records um, at this point, or just confiscate them, or just steal them. You know, they're available on the dark web for a fee. You know, many governments don't have restrictions from buying that sort of stuff. So, you know, if I was rich and I used these guys as a tax shelter, then I would be kind of nervous. Next, Fidelity National Financial, which is one of the recent financial services firms, one of many financial services firms recently that got hacked, has released a little bit more information about what's going on. They told the Maine and California Attorney General that the financial information of about 1.3 million people was compromised. This is from Fidelity's loan care subsidiary that services mortgage loans. I'm not sure why we need to find out about this stuff from the attorneys general rather than from the companies themselves, but that's the way the system works. Right now, they're saying that this information was relatively limited, and information has been stolen many times, like names, addresses, social, phone numbers, stuff like that. We'll see if this gets updated. I don't know. It's certainly possible, but at least we have a little bit of detail about that. And last, in the breach department, there is a release of already existing breach data called the Leaksmiths, Mary Leaksmiths breach, from hackers to you. And they're calling this a Christmas gift. And they've released 50 million records. None of the data is redacted. So if it's got PII in it, personally identifiable information, credit card information, identity card information, all that stuff is still in there. It's all in there. So this is not good if your data happens to be in there. About 75% of the records came from 3 countries, 1/3 from Peru, a quarter from the United States, and 20% from the Philippines. So a significant number are United States folks. You know, so this data I'm sure will be used, if nothing else, for phishing scams, but possibly for other things as well. Next, it's interesting to see, you know, if you look at the numbers, the global cost of cybercrime this year is estimated to be about $8 trillion. That's with a T, and growing by 15% a year. U.S. cybercrime estimates this year is about 300 billion. I think that's pretty low, underestimated, and it expects to grow to about 1,800 billion over the next 5 years. I think that's much better. So that'd be 1.8 trillion. On the other hand, global cybersecurity spending to protect that stuff is about estimated to be about 350 billion a year. So if you look at the numbers, 350 billion in defense against $8 trillion in losses, not surprising why the bad guys are winning. It's really, really lucrative. Nobody wants to spend money. I understand that. But you know, on the other hand, do you want to be the victim of cybercrime? So you got to decide, you know, we need to change the economics of that somehow so that we're spending more, however we do that, so that we're at least trying to level the playing field. Next, the owner of CBS and Paramount, a privately held company called National Amusements, somebody that nobody's ever heard of, disclosed this month in December a breach that affected about 80,000 people. I'm looking at the data there. I'm thinking it's probably employees, but I can't tell. The breach happened about a year ago, so December of 2022. So it took them a year, for whatever flimsy excuse they came up with, not disclosing it. Now, since they're not publicly traded, they don't have to respond to the SEC, but they do have to comply with state privacy laws. So I'm guessing there's probably going to be lawsuits. I'm guessing they're going to have some kind of flimsy excuse that it says that their security controls were so horrible that it took them a year to figure out that valuable stuff, personally identifiable information, was stolen. That's my guess. But does that hold any water? The fact that you're incompetent, does that really give you is that a defense? Gee, our security controls are so horrible that it took us a year to figure out what happened. I guess it's technically possible. You can claim that, but it better be the truth. Otherwise, you're going to be on the wrong end of that lawsuit. And what we are seeing is that the courts are getting much less understanding for that level of incompetence. Next, the Pentagon has released the most recent draft version of the CMMC standard for defense contractors. This probably will impact at least 1 million businesses between defense contractors and their suppliers. It's a draft standard, so there's a 60-day comment period, which ends in February. Then the government has to respond to it and all that stuff, the normal bureaucratic BS. So it probably won't go into effect until late 2024. On the other hand, it'll probably take you at least a year if you have to comply with this to get ready. So if you are one of those companies that does have to comply, I would recommend starting now if you haven't already started. And obviously, we would be happy to help you with that. And lastly, in the News Bite section, AI has got a lot of useful things for purposes, but one of those purposes may wind up being the end of privacy. So that's pretty scary. The most sophisticated iPhone attack ever has been patched finally. It was actually patched several months ago in early to mid 2023, but they're now finally just talking about it, that they think all the iPhones have deployed the patch, and most of the iPhones have deployed the patch. But the attack was live for 4 years before Apple found out about it and patched it, so not great. And these patches are hard, so I'm not particularly beating up Apple, but if you're a user and you think your phone is secure, maybe an iPhone is more secure than other phones, but secure? No, not secure. Next, a company called the Real Estate Wealth Network leaked the private data, and I think it's about 500,000 records, or maybe more than that. Anyway, some large number of records. Maybe it was like 1 billion records of high net worth individuals. It's data like bankruptcies and real property transactions and just all kinds of data. They collect this data for paying customers, which in theory they vet who's a paying customer. But now they leaked all this stuff, and I'm sure there's going to be some high net worth folks who had information. It's probably not illegal information at all. It's just information that they would like to have been private for their own and their family's safety. And it's now public and available on the dark web for anybody. A hospital, and I think this is quite humorous, in the United States, has sued Russian hackers to get them to delete stolen data. They've asked the court to issue a court order. And this is not the first time this has happened. Of course, it's meaningless. It's not like Putin is going to go off. Yeah, we're going to go off and delete that data. But they found the data, at least a copy of the data. Certainly, probably not the only copy. And so they want the American cloud hosting provider to return that copy of the data. But again, likely that's only a copy. And certainly anybody they sold it to, also has a copy. And likely the hackers have multiple backup copies if they're smart. But the idea of getting the courts to dictate to Russian hackers that they should go delete the data is totally meaningless and completely theatrical. And last, the UK has just issued a proposed rule that will make banks liable for romance scam losses up to $500,000 or so per depositor. The romance scams are just huge in terms of billions of dollars people lose to romance scams. Basically somebody pretends to be interested in you and steals your money. And if assuming the banks are required to pay this, then the only defense the bank has is if the person who did it was really, really negligent. So one of two things are going to happen. Either if this happens to you, then the bank is going to drop you as a customer. They may pay the money but drop you as a customer, or they may add a lot of friction to transactions like that to try to protect themselves, at which point they'll say, well, you really were negligent because we stopped the transaction, we made you go off and review it, and you said, oh, yeah, this is legitimate. Alternatively, they'll just raise fees to customers, and they don't really care at that point. That just becomes the cost of doing business. We have not seen any laws like that proposed in the United States, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. So that's what we have. Here's to a safe, happy, healthy, prosperous new year in 2024. And if there's anything we can do to assist you in your cybersecurity needs, please reach out to us. And until next time, stay safe.
Turnkey Cybersecurity and Privacy Solutions offers the complete cybersecurity program for small to medium-sized businesses. They include everything needed to secure your business and meet compliance requirements. Visit our website at turnkeycybersecurityandprivacysolutions.com to learn more.